In the vast and varied ecosystems of our planet, we observe countless forms of life, each with its unique patterns of survival and interaction. Yet sometimes, within our own human habitats, a darkness emerges that defies easy comprehension, a deviation from the expected norms of societal behavior. We turn our gaze now, not to the sprawling savannas or the deep oceans, but to the quiet streets of an American city, where one of the most unsettling chapters of human predatory behavior unfolded. This is a journey into a chilling reality, a world hidden behind an ordinary facade. Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the most infamous serial killers in history, but behind the headlines are disturbing details that many still don't know. Here are 10 chilling facts that go deeper into his terrifying story. We shall explore the unsettling mechanisms of a mind that operated so far outside the bounds of human empathy, examining the methods and motivations that led to such profound tragedy. It is a difficult subject, one that pushes the boundaries of our understanding, but one that, for the sake of comprehending the shadows, we must carefully observe. Our exploration today delves into the grim specifics, the chilling artifacts and confessions that paint a fuller, more disturbing picture of his actions. We will look at the environment he created, the tools he employed, and the almost unbelievable sequence of events that allowed such horrors to persist. This is not to sensationalize, but to understand as best we can the capacity for such extreme behavior and the devastating impact it leaves upon the human world. Prepare yourselves as we step into this unsettling domain. Within the confines of his modest apartment, a truly horrifying transformation was taking place. One that speaks to a chilling detachment from the sanctity of human life. Here, Dahmer established what can only be described as a macabre laboratory. Large industrial-sized barrels, typically used for less sinister purposes, became central to his attempts to erase the evidence of his appalling acts. These containers were filled with hydrochloric acid, a potent and unforgiving substance, capable of breaking down organic matter with relentless efficiency. The air itself must have carried a silent chemical menace. The purpose of these acid baths was stark and brutal, the complete dissolution of his victims' remains. It was a grim, methodical process, undertaken with a disturbing level of calm and calculation. Imagine the scene, the quiet hum of the city outside, juxtaposed with this ghastly undertaking within. For some of his victims, this corrosive embrace meant their physical forms were almost entirely obliterated, leaving behind little more than fragments, their identities nearly erased from the world. The recovery of these remains, or lack thereof, speaks volumes about the lengths to which he would go to conceal his dark deeds, a chilling testament to his determination. The motivations of a predator are often complex, and in Dahmer's case they extended beyond the mere act of killing into something far more ritualistic and profoundly disturbing. He harbored ambitions that reveal a deeply warped internal world, a desire to create a permanent monument to his depravity. His plans, as later uncovered, involved the construction of what he envisioned as an altar, a shrine built from the very bones of those he had murdered. This was not a haphazard collection but a carefully considered project, a grotesque temple to his own dark impulses. This macabre structure was to be adorned with elements that enhanced its sinister nature. Black candles, their flickering light intended to cast eerie shadows upon his collection, and skulls, painted with meticulous, unsettling detail. The very concept speaks to a desire to control, to possess, and to immortalize his victims in a way that served his own twisted psychological needs. It suggests a descent into a fantasy world where he was the architect of a domain built on death and decay, a chilling insight into a mind utterly consumed by its darkest desires. In a chilling perversion of memory-keeping, Dahmer engaged in a practice that further underscores the depth of his detachment and his desire to relive his horrific acts. He meticulously documented his crimes using Polaroid photographs, creating a visual archive of his atrocities. These were not mere snapshots of the aftermath, but carefully composed images, often involving the posing of his victims' bodies in deeply disturbing and degrading ways. Each click of the shutter captured a moment of profound violation, a permanent record of his ultimate power over another human being. This collection of photographs served as a private gallery of horrors, a way for him to revisit his crimes and perhaps prolong the sense of control and gratification he derived from them. The existence of these images, later discovered by investigators, provided undeniable and graphic evidence of his actions, but also offered a horrifying window into his psyche. It demonstrated a need not just to commit these acts, but to possess them, to turn human beings into objects for his grotesque tableaus, forever frozen in a moment of unimaginable terror and defilement. Chapter 4. The Unmaking of Man, Experiments in Control. Perhaps one of the most disturbing facets of Dahmer's reign of terror was his attempt to exert a form of ultimate living control over his victims, to transform them into something entirely subservient to his will. He engaged in horrifying makeshift experiments, drilling holes into the skulls of individuals, some of whom were tragically still alive. Into these openings, he would inject substances like hydrochloric acid or boiling water, driven by a grotesque fantasy of creating what he termed zombies, mindless, compliant slaves who would obey his every command. These crude and brutal procedures were, of course, doomed to fail in their fantastical objective, but they invariably resulted in the agonizing deaths of his victims. The very attempt reveals a chilling desire not just for death, but for a form of living subjugation, a complete eradication of the victim's will and personhood while they still drew breath. It speaks to a profound loneliness twisted into an unspeakable need for companionship on his own horrifying terms, an ambition to craft pliable beings from the unwilling, a truly nightmarish vision of control. Chapter 5. The Consumption of Essence, a Cannibal's Communion. The act of killing, for Dahmer, was not always the final step in his horrifying sequence of behaviors. He confessed to acts of cannibalism, a practice that pushes the boundaries of human taboo to their absolute limit. He admitted to consuming specific parts of his victims' bodies with a particular focus on their hearts and biceps. This was not driven by a need for sustenance, but by a deeply disturbed psychological motive. He believed that by ingesting parts of his victims, he could make them a part of himself, achieving a closer, more permanent connection to them. This chilling desire to internalize his victims, to literally absorb their essence, speaks to a profound and twisted form of objectification and possession. It suggests a desperate, almost ritualistic attempt to combat his own deep-seated feelings of isolation and inadequacy by consuming the very individuals he had destroyed. The act of eating human flesh, in this context, becomes a terrifying symbol of his ultimate control and his warped longing for a connection that could only be achieved through the most extreme and horrifying means imaginable. Chapter 6. The Trophies of Predation, Souvenirs of Death. Beyond the immediate aftermath of his crimes, Dahmer exhibited a behavior common to certain types of predators, the collection of trophies. These were not random keepsakes, but carefully preserved parts of his victims, tangible reminders of his lethal encounters. Investigators discovered a horrifying collection within his apartment: skulls, meticulously cleaned and sometimes painted, various other bones, and even preserved genitalia. These gruesome mementos were stored away in drawers, cabinets, and even the refrigerator, integrated into his living space. The act of keeping such trophies serves a complex psychological purpose for the predator. It allows them to relive the experience, to maintain a sense of power and dominance long after the act itself. For Dahmer, these human remains were more than just objects. They were symbols of his conquest, physical proof of his ability to control and destroy. Each item represented a life taken, a person reduced to a mere possession in his private macabre museum, a chilling testament to his complete disregard for human dignity. Chapter 7. The Lure of Deception, a Predator's Bait. The method by which Dahmer lured his victims into his deadly lair was often deceptively simple, preying on vulnerability and the desire for connection or financial gain. He would approach strangers, often in public places like bars or bus stops, and engage them in conversation. A common tactic was to offer them money, typically amounts like $50 or $100, in exchange for accompanying him back to his apartment. The pretext was usually for photo shoots, promising them an easy way to earn cash. This seemingly innocuous offer masked a lethal intent. Once behind the closed doors of his apartment, the promise of photographs and payment quickly dissolved into a terrifying reality from which few would escape. The cash was merely bait, a tool to disarm his targets and persuade them into a vulnerable situation where he held all the power. This predatory strategy highlights his ability to manipulate and deceive. to present a non-threatening facade while harboring the darkest of intentions, turning a simple transaction into a prelude to unimaginable horror. In the grim chronicle of Dahmer's crimes, there are moments that highlight not only his depravity, but also the tragic failures of the systems designed to protect the innocent. One such instance involved a 14-year-old boy, Konorak Synthasamphony, who managed a desperate escape from Dahmer's apartment, naked, bleeding, and disoriented. He was found wandering the streets by concerned citizens who promptly called the police, hoping to secure his safety and bring his tormentor to justice. However, when the authorities arrived, Dahmer managed to skillfully manipulate the situation. He calmly convinced the officers that the boy was his 19-year-old lover, and that their encounter was merely a domestic dispute, a lover's quarrel that had gotten out of hand. Tragically, the police believed Dahmer's story, perhaps influenced by the boy's dazed state or societal biases of the time. They returned the terrified, drugged teenager to Dahmer's custody, effectively sealing his fate. This heartbreaking incident underscores a missed opportunity that could have saved not only Konorak, but also subsequent victims. The human capacity for compartmentalization can be truly astounding, and in Dahmer's case, it presented a jarring paradox. Despite the gruesome nature of his secret life, filled with murder, dismemberment, and unspeakable experiments, he would occasionally engage in acts that suggested a semblance of normalcy, or even piety. It is reported that Dahmer would sometimes attend church services, seeking perhaps a moment of conventional ritual amidst the chaos of his internal and external world. What makes this particularly chilling is the proximity of these acts of supposed devotion to his heinous crimes. He might attend a church service shortly after having committed a murder, the scent of death perhaps still clinging to him, unknown to the congregation around him. This behavior speaks to a profound disconnect, an ability to wear a mask of conformity while harboring the darkest of secrets. Whether this was a genuine, albeit twisted, search for solace, an attempt at normalcy, or another layer of complex deception, it adds another unsettling dimension to his already terrifying profile. Jeffrey Dahmer's reign of terror, which had claimed the lives of 17 young men and boys, eventually came to an end, with his arrest in 1991, and subsequent conviction. He was sentenced to multiple life terms, destined to spend the remainder of his days within the stark confines of the Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. However, his life in prison was to be relatively short-lived, concluding not by natural causes but by an act of violence that mirrored, in some ways, the brutality he had inflicted upon others. In November 1994, just a few years into his sentence, Dahmer was attacked and killed by a fellow inmate, Christopher Scarver. Scarver, who was also serving time for murder, later claimed that he had been divinely inspired, stating that God had told him to carry out the act to clean up the world by ending Dahmer's life. This violent end, deep within the prison walls, brought a final, brutal closure to Dahmer's story, though the echoes of his horrific crimes continue to resonate, a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk within. As we draw this particular observation to a close, the chilling details of Jeffrey Dahmer's life and crimes leave an indelible mark on our understanding of human behavior. The facts we have explored today are not mere statistics. They represent profound suffering, lives cut short, and families shattered by a singular predatory force. Dahmer's story is more terrifying than fiction, and all of it was real. The meticulous planning, the grotesque experiments, the keeping of trophies. These are not the actions of a simple monster from myth, but of a human being who descended into an abyss of unimaginable darkness. The capacity for such depravity existing within one individual forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the potential spectrum of human nature. While the vast majority of humanity operates within a framework of empathy and societal norms, the case of Dahmer serves as a stark reminder that such frameworks can, in rare and terrifying instances, completely break down. His ability to maintain a veneer of normalcy while perpetrating such horrors is perhaps one of the most unsettling aspects, a chilling testament to the hidden depths that can lie beneath a seemingly ordinary surface. The legacy of Jeffrey Dahmer is one of enduring horror and a profound sense of unease. It compels us to remain vigilant, to question, and to strive for a deeper understanding of the psychological forces that can lead to such devastating outcomes. While the darkness he embodied is extreme, the lessons learned from his case continue to inform our efforts to comprehend and hopefully prevent such tragedies in the future. The shadow he cast is long, a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the profound impact of unchecked human cruelty.